The safest: Russia, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Bashkortostan, and all zones that are in this radius of availability. It's safe where there's more land further away from large bodies of water. Other safe cities are those that don't show Russia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan. These are the safest places. Do you agree with this prophecy?
What are we saving ourselves from? From ourselves? You can never escape from yourself, anywhere and anytime.
Well, maybe from certain situations that happen in the outside world.
So you suddenly decided for yourself that if you physically move your body in space, everything will be forgiven and your debts will be wiped away. Are you suddenly going to become invulnerable? What will happen then? No, it doesn't work that way. If a person lives by the heart, by conscience, in harmony with their soul, they don't need to escape. We need to continue living in a way that makes our hearts burn even brighter. Even though I say open heart, in reality it is just a word. If we dive into this process and choose more precise words, then it's about intensity. It's about the level of fire. An open heart, you could say, is when a person has felt this process in general, but it has depth. It has levels, it has layers. If a person lives in a way that their heart keeps burning brighter and brighter, if they can keep track of the channels in their head, making sure they don't close up throughout the day, they don't turn into, into broken pipes, hoses. What difference does it make where he is? He will always be fine.
Okay, so what do you think? What can be? The vision is to identify places on the planet that are, let's say, safer. Are more, let's say, safer.
For what purpose safe?
For staying.
Your home. The safest place is your home.
Right now, there are a lot of different prophecies about floods and all sorts of things.
I was just as much of a fool back in 2012. Ran to save myself. The most remote part of Russia from the world's oceans. Altai. Mountain Altai. Height. Remoteness. Everything is in the best shape. Will I save myself? Saved myself. And then I got tired of saving myself. I came back home.
In the previous videos, as far as I remember, you said that Russia is not exactly a safe place to stay.
That didn't happen. I said that now is the time of cataclysms. I was talking about the whole planet, about global rhythms, about global currents. They're unsafe nowhere. If you're not viable, just moving your physical body through space won't help you. Our life is not defined by the position of the physical body. Our life is defined by the connection with the soul. And since the soul is inside you, wherever you find yourself, nothing will fundamentally change.
Why do certain disasters happen? Does it depend on the rhythms, on the vibrations of the planet?
Yes, a lot depends on that. There are a huge number of factors. The question here is where you will be at that moment. Among whom? And not in the sense of where your physical body will be, but among what vibrations you will be, to whom you will resonate. You see, you can spend half your life digging a bunker somewhere deep in the mountains, and at the moment X, your builders, your guards, will just take your head and take everything for themselves. So the question is, what would stop you from just living? This time is normal. You can't run away from yourself. And so, if a person is moving from the position of a scared cat, just rushing around the room, knocking everything over in their path, who are you at that moment? At that moment, you're an animal, the unconscious, irrational, just a set of instincts. Save the body, save the body, save the body. And the fact that the body is just this tiny part of you, as an energetic organism, where does that go? So we just throw it in the trash, right? Physics. Yes, there it is, clear, known. The psyche. Well, what kind of ones? Electromagnetic fields, connections of neurons in the brain? And what about energy? What is above physics, above the psyche, is what is more fundamental, That is almost the size of the entire universe. Where do we put it? This will somehow save us as we move across the surface of the planet.
Can we somehow influence the overall events happening in the outside world?
Everything influences everything here. Of course we can. Another thing, again, is for what? Why? For what purpose? If it brings you joy, if you get pleasure from it, if it's part of your journey, then go ahead, influence away. No one is against it. And what if you do that? From what position? Oh, it's scary. Oh, the horror. Oh, what a nightmare. Yeah, what are you going to influence there? What will you achieve? What will you accomplish? Why even spend your life on things that are scary? Isn't it easier to spend your life searching for a state where you're not scared of anything at all? To freedom. Freedom implies that you step out of these processes when you think, oh, where can I escape? Oh, what to believe in? Oh, but here we go again. This constant misunderstanding of reality, always this state of uncertainty, a state of unpredictability, a state where you are nobody and your name means nothing. And we need to urgently do something about this. Or a state when you have free will. When reality sees you as a worthy person, when you live a life where you don't have to lie, be hypocritical, sweep things under the rug. When you are who you are, when you allow yourself to enjoy, when you allow yourself to fulfill your desires, by fulfilling your desires, the people around you are also happy. Because you are not fulfilling your desires at their expense. You yourself have full pockets. So, in no way do I agree with such positions. To be saved. Save what? Physics? It's still going to fall apart soon and go to the worms. Who are you saving there?
Well, okay, if, for example, a person wants to save physics, here there's also an important factor. How long will he even live in this physics? Of course, we will all die sooner or later, but we will do it. Or at the moment of some extraordinary events, or in some deep old age.
Well, look. If a person starts to develop their extrasensory abilities, at some point, they begin to pay attention to the processes that occur through their physical body, which correlate with what is happening at the level of their physical body in the physical world. So, he starts to become aware in advance of what is going to happen in the material sense. This process is very simple. There are indicators. Indicators are inside each person. One of these indicators is the energy conductivity of the channels on the head. I often show this. I point directly at them with my fingers. I just brought him to the chest. If you breathing through these channels, you can really see how streams of energy flow through your head, through your neck, and into your body. And all of this spreads out in cool, yet simultaneously warm flows. So at the very least, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, everything is fine for you right now. There is an even more serious indicator, an even more qualitative indicator that shows your vitality. This is your heart. Here, I'm directing my attention to the heart, and there, a fire is burning. I'm sitting in mountains now.
Okay, but what if you, for example, or not you, were in some country where a disaster is happening?
Well, if it were for grandma.
So would that be safety?
Safety of what? What are we all trying to? The physical body. We're not even saving the physical body. We're just soothing our troubled psyche. Well, to be honest, if I may say, we create an illusion for ourselves that everything is fine. Although sometimes, while creating this illusion, a person suddenly finds themselves somewhere in the middle of India, in disgusting living conditions, and with just a few coins in their pocket. There he is saving himself. Or, okay, not in India. Finds themselves there at an altitude of 1,000 meters in the Altai mountains and at a temperature of -50, because it wasn't really taken into account that winter there can be much harsher. I'm talking about myself right now. So I was saving my physical condition. And suddenly I found out that my physical state was at -50 inside the house. Far from the village, yes, in which, if the stove goes out now, then everything will end very sadly. Well, I really pushed my physical limits. No, actually, I just had an inflamed psyche and it was taking control of my actions. And it led me to very questionable results. I don't worry about it. I don't even get upset. On the contrary, I remember it all for fun. But that happened.
Can we feel on an energetic level that something might happen in the world?
Of course we can. I constantly feel, sometimes even. I make some publications on this topic. Sometimes we even do special practices to be among those who don't notice what's happening in the world. Something happened again. Of course, it's all visible.
So it's all about developing your sensitivity and extrasensory abilities, right?
Of course, yes. I'm telling you, our heart shows our vitality. If my vitality is high, nothing will happen to me no matter where I am physically.
Okay. And on the level of your feelings, your vision? What could you say in general about the coming year, 2025?
Well, this year will be the concluding cycle of cataclysms, and then everything will start to decrease. Everything will be fine again.
So it's a sequence in any case?
There are cycles, an 11-year cycle. They rotate, but they aren't strictly exactly 11 years. There's a plus-minus year gap. To predict what that gap will be, you have to live through it.
Will everything be okay for everyone? Or how?
This is some kind of influence on all people. This influence affects some people while others resist it. So, 2012. There was a very strong influence. Run, save yourselves, fools. I was young and foolish. Extrasensory perception, I had my doubts. I succumbed to that influence and ran to save myself. Did you save yourself? Well, I did save myself. And those who didn't run to save themselves also, for some reason, managed to survive. Because nothing happened.
Well, it happened somewhere else, and some people didn't make it. Why does this happen?
No, I'm talking about the end of the world right now. In theory, no one should have survived. Of course, all sorts of cataclysms happen, earthquakes, floods. This all correlates with the society that's there, with the people who generate vibrations. If in a specific area, the majority starts generating a constraining structure, then that area will tremble and those people will suffer.
So people themselves attracted these events into their lives, into their country. So there are so many people there who resonate as if in response to a call.
That can happen. Or maybe it won't happen. All of humanity is interconnected with itself, with the surrounding reality, with our planet, with the Kali Yuga, and with global currents. Here comes the impulse from space. Well, okay, let's not talk about impulses from space. Here we have the phase of the moon. The phase of the moon correlates with mental disorders. So the moon affects everyone. But for some, mental exacerbations happen, while for others, they don't.
All right, and you say that everything will be fine. Starting from 2025, the cycle closes.
I'm talking about this one. Tension. This is it. The pressure that leads to strange reactions in a person. So look, here's the thing. Let's say you need to write your thesis. Around you, there's peace, calm, and bliss. You need to write your thesis. You live in a dorm with parties, drinking, and hanging out every day. Will the result be the same?
Equally different.
Absolutely right. There are cycles when there's a party, drinking, and hanging out around you. And you have to live with that. And there are people who snap and start to go wild. And there are people who see this process and say, no, you won't get me involved in these drinking parties, these carousing parties. I will maintain my harmony. I won't be led by that. You won't be able to provoke me. I will watch my energy. I will watch my heart, and I will go through it calmly, harmoniously, with love, even with pleasure. Well, your drinking and partying doesn't bother me. They won't be able to knock me out of this state.
All right. And you say that right now we are in the Kali Yuga.
Yes.
What epochs are there?
Sati, to compare, and Treta, and Kali.
How do they differ?
The difference is that, first of all, a person has a different growth, different physical parameters, different capabilities. These parameters change. Fundamental, important aspects of life and the consequences of following or not following are changing these important aspects. And a person's capabilities change their abilities as a living being, their spectrum of perception. Right now, a person has the narrowest spectrum of perception. In Satya Yuga, it was widest. Expanded. In the Satya Yuga, people would actually walk to visit the gods. Try to go visit God now. You don't even know how, in principle, this is possible. Back then, it was okay, taken for granted. Kings would go visit the gods. The sages constantly arranged all sorts of things, some events. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva would come. I wasn't sleeping at that moment, I was awake. And that was it. A normal, everyday way of life. But then, as a person's abilities began to fade and diminish, naturally, the rules changed, responsibilities changed, and so did the consequences.
And at what point? When did these abilities start to fade away?
5,000 years ago, the age of Kali began. 5,000 years ago, these processes, the era changed and these processes started. So people started to become dull.
Why does the era change? Where is this turning point? Some kind of action? Or it's...
This is Brahma because that's how it was conceived. Why does winter change to spring? Why does our spring change to summer? Because that's how the universe is structured. The same thing. Why do our eras change? Because our creator, our Brahma, the creator of this universe, decided that it would be this way.
Will it be that our abilities will narrow down, narrow down, narrow down, narrow down?
Yes, that's right.
Why?
Well, why is it snowing outside? That's a rhetorical question. I can only talk about what narrows down, what expands, that changes. And why does this happen? This is how our world was judged.
So this is an absolutely normal and natural process. We are now coming to the reality to which we have come, the era of Kali, from which we can no longer go anywhere. We can't escape it.
Of course, it's a cycle of global currents. That's how reality is structured. That's how this world is designed. Yes, with our abilities are sharply narrowing. Yes, we are becoming duller. Yes, we are becoming more and more like beasts. That's right. Yes, at some point, we will even lose the ability to live in a physical body without the help of technology. We will lose the ability to reproduce. All of this will happen over time. That's why humanity, which understands what's happening, which is aware, who have access to this knowledge, they are somehow coming up with ways to level all of this out. Some part of this group is exclusively focused on building avatars energetically. Some of these people are focused on building a technological Altai, that is some kind of being that can take control of an increasingly deteriorating human and maintain their viability. Someone is working on developing technologies that allow people to live, even in bodies that are no longer viable. Is that so? Yes. Everything is developing, everything is fine, everything is going exactly as it was intended. But someone is still trying to preserve knowledge, practices, and techniques when a person manages to maintain their self-sufficiency and integrity. That's how I feel about it. So I carry information, I hold knowledge within myself, meaning I pass on the knowledge that I, in turn, have received. How you can preserve yourself as a viable being without the outside world. But isn't it just simple?
What do you think? Are we going through lessons, so to speak, that each era has its own lesson for humanity?
Lessons? For what purpose?
I don't know, for our development.
What kind of development? If we were created, then Where's the development in that?
But we're also here for a reason. That's how we came to be.
For a reason, yes. But you see, when a person says that we're here, I often hear that our soul is learning. And in the evening, I sit on my bed, dive into my soul, and I see that it already knows everything. What am I learning there? That's nonsense. That's something that doesn't correspond to reality.
What's the essence of the era?
We're just playing here and playing. It's just entertainment.
Okay. But what if we specifically look at our era, the era of potassium?
Yeah, what's the difference, regardless of the era? In any era, the situation is the same. We're just playing around. What's the point of developing your character in a video game? To get pleasure. And then that video game will become outdated, and you'll never play it again. What? Are you developing yourself when you play a video game? No, you're just enjoying yourself. The same thing. Our soul doesn't develop. She is created perfectly. There's nothing to develop there. But when you're perfect, you get bored very quickly because you're perfect. Give up your perfection? Well, how do you give that up? But to immerse yourself in some game, where are your pathetic parameters? Limited? Where are you damaged? Now, that's pretty cool. To rewind your shortcomings and remember that you are absolutely perfect, well, that's cool. But you're not teaching yourself anything. You remember who you were if you want to. And if you don't want to, you keep diving into the game, forgetting even more who you were. Sooner or later, humanity will step onto a technological level of repetition. All of this, when a person puts on some kind of tech gadget, fully immersing themselves in the virtual world, and potentially even forget that they are a person who has put on this tech gadget. That's how it will be. Right now, that's not the case because the technology is still not that advanced. And similarly, yes, our soul is climbing in with its organs of perception in the physical and material world and is having fun here. But if the problem is that if she will get carried away with it, so this organ of perception will die off along with the physical body. Well, you can frostbite a finger and then I have to amputate it. And if she doesn't get carried away, then she'll remember, oh, it turns out I not develop at all. I came here just to have some fun. These things I'm talking about, all of this right now, and I realize how much all of this can be perceived distorted. Don't try to seek the truth in someone else's words. It's a path to nowhere. Strive to develop your own perception enough to look at all of this on your own. Returning to the question of saving the physical body, this is a question that we don't need to solve. Thus, as proposed in this video, this question is solved in a completely different way. We spend a certain part of our attention, energy, time, and effort to connect with the soul. The better we manage to connect with the soul, the stronger our contact with it, the higher our vitality, regardless of where we are in space at that moment. This can be done through practices, through mantras or other methods, but it needs to be done. And just moving your physical body in space in the grand scheme of things leads to nothing. Because if your vitality has run out, even an unnecessary catastrophe will find a way to stop you. Stop.
Thank you, Anton, for the answers. We'll leave the link to the courses in the description below the video. Also, write down your questions and impressions. Maybe we'll answer them in the next video.
Do you want to unlock your inner strength and learn to manage energy? The course, Power of Consciousness 1. Practical energy will provide you with tools to improve health, develop intuition, and gain a deeper understanding of the world. Join and start changing your life right now. Link in the description.